look into compound fractions. So a compound fraction is a fraction in which the numerator, the denominator, or both are themselves fractional expressions. Let's look at one method for simplifying a compound fraction. This method is called multiplying all terms by the least common denominator. Right, so the least common denominator here are all the terms that we have in the denominator, all the unique terms, and just the number of times they occur. Well, we've got two terms, and they each occur once. So the least common denominator is x divided by y. So our first step is to identify the LCD, which is the product of all unique factors. That's a U. We could write that nicer. The number of times they occur. So in this case, the LCD is x times y. We have one x, we have one y. They all occur once. All right, so so now we're going to multiply by the LCD. All right, so we have x over y plus 1 divided by 1 minus y over x. And so everybody's going to get multiplied by x times y. Every single term. There are 4 terms here. So everything that's added or subtracted in the numerator is a term, and everything that's added or subtracted in the denominator is a term. Now we can cancel the y's there. Nothing to cancel in the second term. Nothing to cancel in the denominator, the first term in the denominator, but we can cancel the x's here. So now we'll just multiply, just like you would always do. Multiply all terms in the numerator together, multiply all terms in the denominator together. So simplify all terms in the numerator, and then simplify all terms in the denominator. We technically have 4 terms, right? We wouldn't multiply the terms that are added, but for instance, in the first term, we would multiply the x times x together, right? Because those are both left in that first term. And the 1 times x times y, which is x over y. And x times y times 1 is just x over y. And then don't forget a negative sign there. Y times y is y squared. If there had been a binomial to multiply to, then it would have been better to do plus a negative. So you didn't forget to distribute the negative to both terms. But here, since it's just a single term, it's easy enough just to remember to include a subtraction sign. And that's all there is to the first one. Let's look at the second one. All right, so here is another example. And in this one, we're going to use the second method because in calculus, you're going to see an expression similar to this one. And what we want to do is just turn this into a fraction divided by a fraction. Now, technically, any term term that's not a non-repeating decimal, or not something like e or pi, it can be written as a fraction. It's a rational number. It can be written as a fraction. All right, so h here can be written as a fraction. It's h over 1. 1 over a plus h, and 1 over a can be combined into one fraction, and then we'd have fraction divided by fraction. All right, so method number 2 here is simplifying the compound fraction is combining terms to create one fraction in both the numerator and denominator. So it should be D-E-N. I'll put denom. All right, so we're going to combine the terms to create one fraction in the numerator and denominator, and then we'll multiply by the reciprocal. All right, so step number 1. Again, we want to identify the LCD. The LCD is still the same thing. All right, it's all the unique factors, no more than the number of times they occur. We wrote that on the last slide. We don't have to write it again. So we've got an A, and we've got an A plus H. Those are different because the second A has an H added to it. Don't multiply it out. Leave it in factored form. That's our least common denominator. Second step, you're going to multiply terms by the least common missing terms. Yeah, excuse me. Multiply terms by missing terms. From the least common denominator. So if you look, we don't have to worry about the denominator because of this fraction because it is already one term. But we do have to, it's one fraction already, right? So h is one fraction, we're done, right? We can put it as h over 1, we're done with that. It's these two, we need to create that, make that be one fraction. So the 1 over a plus h is missing an a. Right? So we've got 1 over a plus h. We're going to multiply that by a over a. And the other term is missing the a plus h. Sorry, I want to color code it. So we have to multiply the numerator and denominator of that term by a plus h. Now here, remember in the last slide I said we didn't have to really worry about changing the subtraction sign to add a negative because we were, we just need to make the y negative back here. Right, we just need to make the y negative in the denominator. Right? We didn't really have to do anything else with it. But here we have to distribute it, right, to a and h, right, to that whole binomial. So let's make that plus a negative so we don't forget. That's going to be a negative a and a negative h. All right, so now we're good with the numerator. We just got to simplify that. And the denominator can just stay n h. All right, so now we'll simplify. So we have a, and that's going to be minus a minus h. I'm going to distribute. Divided by a times a plus h, all divided by h. All right, we're not done simplifying. All right, well, a minus a, that's minus h is just going to be a negative h, right? The a's will cancel. So we have negative h divided by a times a plus h. That's a weird looking h. There we go. All divided by h. And now we're going to change that to multiply by the reciprocal. So that would be negative h divided by a plus h. That was the numerator. I guess, oh yeah, I knew that. There's the a there. And then dividing by h is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. Remember this, we could write this as h over 1, so we're going to multiply by 1 over h. And now we're almost done because we could simplify this. Right? We could just cancel out those h's. And so now we have negative 1 divided by a times a plus h. And we're done. Right? So this is another method by combining our fractions. And this might look a little bit trickier, but it's not too bad. And there are times when we're going to need to combine our terms in calculus so that we can later simplify. All right, so this is one example where we'll combine the terms from the fraction, simplify, and then multiply by the reciprocal. This particular example, nothing particular special, fraction, then we can just multiply by the least common denominator. And I'll have you practice each one of these. And that's the end of this video. And so in the next video, we're going to look at rationalizing denominators and numerators. We looked at it for single terms. Now we'll look at it for binomials. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.